Hello friends, and welcome back to this new video. This video is about my measurements and taking measurements on my speaker, and I've been developing it and now my prototype, the pre-work for prototype number 3. So I'm using the prototype 1 Voice of Lancelot's type of cabinet, and I'm optimizing the crossover and also experimenting with the funnel, and at the moment also with the tilt, which I would now prefer, and I've adjusted the crossover to actually fit. It is now simpler and getting simpler and simpler, and I've changed my measurement style now. So to go into that, as you might have well known, I've been sharing this graph before, like about a week ago, about the frequency response of the speaker. That was before, I think it was after I changed the funnel. Put the funnel on the top, and I published this. But as I started working with the speaker, I just noticed, and this will happen to you if you develop your speaker further and further in your system, is that you start to hear, your hearing becomes more sensitive to things that don't work and that are off. And yeah, that can be a very disconcerting process, hearing your speaker being off. And so that's why these measurements come in, because they can help you correlate your measurements to things that you're hearing, and that just speeds up the process once you get proficient at that. And so I'm halfway or something, or probably a quarter on the way with that kind of phenomena. So anyway, I discovered that something wasn't right, and I'll tell you what it was. So when I retook the measurement, and I stopped using this, and what I did is I fed it into a test signal into a DAC, and the DAC would actually put it to my amp, my tube amp, and then drive the speaker. I got a very different response, and I'll show you now. So in purple there, let's just change that color a bit. Well, these are not ideal colors. So this pink line here was the new response. So I'll isolate it. So what you basically can see, it started dropping off earlier, and it became smoother over there. So I'll remove the old graph. So now you can see that. It still has, because prototype number 1 doesn't have a good bass response as the folded horn has, so it misses everything until 30 Hertz. It starts dropping off, where prototype number 2 just is flat until 18, more or less flat. So what you see here, it smoothed out quite a lot with the tube amp. So the reaction to the changing impedance there is just much better. And this was also more in line with what I was actually hearing. This was not as the super suck out that the graph suggested. And then it starts sloping off, which is a little bit my preference, to have a not so bright system, but which is a real balance. But you can see it just slopes off, so there's not really massive peaks going on. It's reasonably smooth. At parts it's plus minus 3 dBs, and especially here up here, it's very the variances are actually quite small, and then as you get lower, and then probably because the two drivers start overlapping, you've got a bit more interference with the rises and peaks. And then of course once you get towards the Schroeder frequency regions on the 300 Hertz, it really starts curving because of room modes. Now that is quite a difference, and what my lesson was from this is that you really need to have the same type of amp as you're developing for. So I would say, if you're developing for a solid state, do a solid state amp that has the same feedback type as the amp that you will be using it with. If you're using it for tube amps, then the impedance doesn't matter that much, and you will optimize for the type of amp. So if you have a non-feedback, say a single-ended triode or push-pull amp in class A, then yes, by all means, just make sure that you have a tube amp, say a transformer coupled tube amp in your testing setup, because else your results will not be so relevant to your actual listening situation, and what you'll be here, you might be, in this way your measurements will become more relevant. So I think that's the lesson for it. Now, that said, that's probably the takeaway for this video. I'll just explain, because I actually thought, you know what, I've got so many people going on about flat responses, and that it is sort of such the magic bullet to good audio. But so I thought, you know what, I'm gonna lift this up and see what happens. So let me show you how that looked like. So now in the darker purple, the more purpley instead of the more pinkish color, in the purple you see the new response. And so reasonably flat, so this is the interim response, reasonably flat, and then sort of after 2-3k it starts gently sloping down. But also the resonance peak is not as high anymore as it was previously. But this was all, for those aficionados in a flat response, this was really all that my hearing is capable of. This is my maximum tolerance level of brightness. Any more and it just doesn't assault on my senses. And yeah, my partner Jody is even more sensitive to these regions, so it didn't stack up. And whether that's because in Omni you got so much energy being put in the room in the higher region, or put in the room, but only a fraction reaches you directly. I don't know why, but the balance, this is the maximum that I could tolerate. I've since sloped it down a little bit to fit my style. So still reasonably smooth, but there is a certain curve to it that it smoothly transitions, and that way I don't think, and we'll talk about that in a different region. That way, if you have a tone and the overtones in the frequency spectrum, they're still in proportion as they are in the music, even though it slopes off a little bit. So that retains much of the character of an instrument. And that will be the subject probably of a next video. How to test for good quality with your speakers and seeing if they do things right. So thank you for watching this far. Thank you for your subscribing, all those that have subscribed. I'm happy to have you on board, and I hope you'll find the upcoming videos as useful as the ones that made you subscribe. If you have any comments on this, just put them in the comments, and I'll generally read them within a day. And yeah, have a brilliant day, and hope to catch you in the next video. Bye bye.